We believe that the heart of a man is a treasure trove of untold stories, powerful lessons, and profound wisdom. Through authentic dialogues and insightful discussions, we aim to unlock these treasures, one story at a time. So, whether you're seeking guidance, inspiration, or simply a moment of reflection, you're in the right place. Get ready to be challenged, inspired, and transformed. And now, to guide you through this journey of discovery, please welcome your host, a visionary leader and a true catalyst for change, Dwayne Dwyer, but we affectionately know him as the Mindset Coach.
Good evening, family. Good evening, and welcome back to another week and another episode of the Hearts of Men podcast. I am one of your co-hosts for the evening. My name is Tawami Gaddy. You know me as the son of Timothy. Y'all the one that crowned me with that name, and it fits, so I wear it. But affectionately known as the Available Man. Join with me. You know, I'm telling you, I got to get one of them sound things. I can add this little bump, 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 bump. We talk about the Unc with the Funk, Uncle Junior, affectionately known as the Consistency Coach, and our big brother and our coach, Doctor. You got to put the doctor in your throat, Doctor Dwayne Dwyer, certified speaker and coach. We know him as the Mindset Coach. Brothers, good evening and happy Friday. How are you brothers doing?
Good evening, happy Friday, back at you, and I'm doing well,
I'm good, man. As always, look forward to these Friday evenings, having a great conversation with you and you guys, and as always, with the livest chat and social media. So yeah, I'm good. I'm excited about today's conversation.
Hey man, you know me. I echo the same thing every week because it's true every week. You know, it's starting to seem like it's starting to become a trend of having rough weeks at work lately. But you know, we're gonna work over that. We're gonna get past that era, that phase. But it becomes worth it because on Friday nights I get to come home, turn on the lights, put the camera on, and chop it up with my brothers live here on these platforms. And so I just appreciate you brothers for showing up every weekend, giving me a place to chill with my bros. Across the waters, of course, but we're still kicking it. Listen, shout out to the livest chat. Coach already said it here in these YouTube streets, right? It gets no better. If you're not in the chats, please do me a favor. Go ahead and get in the chats. Let us know if you're in the hallways. Come on into the room. You know, the old folks say, come on in. Anyway, and go ahead and join the chat. Let us know your thoughts throughout the episode. We see it. We try to react to them. And we try to give you your recognition while you are here. So with that said, Nick D, the rebirth of Nick D, welcome. Crystal Everett, welcome, sister. Uncle with the Funk is here with us. His divine appointment, welcome, sis. Good evening. Yes, it's Maya. It is good to see you this evening, sis. Who else do we have? Lisa Keys. I tell her she's the big sister in the community, period. She may not be the oldest, but she's the big sister. And if you know, you know. Welcome, sis. Welcome this evening. Who else? Adrian Artist. It's good to see you, sis. Miss Robin Bowers and Miss Charlotte Jordan. I always got to pause when I say their names so I can see the smile on my brother's face. Welcome. Good evening. And if I missed anyone, if y'all see anyone that I didn't catch, y'all can go ahead. Again, shout them out. But if I missed you, charge it to my heart, my head, and not my heart, please.
Did you get an agent artist? I may have missed it.
I did. I did.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's all, we Miss Adrian artist, we'll give you 2 shout outs, Good evening again. With that said, I'm excited for this episode as well. So let's get into it. Now, let's be honest for a moment, if we can, right? We spend so much time trying to fix relationships, right? Men, we try to fix our relationship with women. Women trying to fix relationship with men. We're trying to fix relationships with our family, with our friends, on our jobs. We're constantly trying to repair and better our relationships with one another. But very few men stop and then ask the question, what about the relationship I have with myself? Because here's the truth. You will never have a healthy relationship with anybody else until you fix the one that you have, as Mike used to say, with the man in the mirror. So think about it. How can you love someone else when you don't even know how to love yourself? How can you communicate clearly when you've never learned to communicate with your own emotions? How can you lead a household when you can't even lead your own habits, your own thoughts, your own discipline? Most men are struggling because of not because of who we are dating or who we chose to marry all the time, right? But sometimes we struggle because we're carrying unhealed versions of ourselves into every connection that we touch, right? So today, we're going to talk about the relationship that determines all your relationships, the one that shapes how you love, how you trust, how you show up, how you build. And if you are willing to be honest, brothers, if you're willing to be honest with yourself, with one another, then for the next few moments, I think this conversation would be a good turning point for us. So whether you know you need it or not, stay tuned, stay engaged, and let's take this conversation for a ride. All right. And I'm trying to get better at this monologue thing, work with. But brothers, I want to bring up an idea when we talk about dealing with the relationships that we have with ourselves. I want to bring up the idea that we can't even start on ourselves until we build a relationship. I put it in it as higher level relationship, because I know the goal is to reach people, and wherever you find yourself, because a lot of people are on different walks, right? But for me, it's with the Most High, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I think that is our first relationship that we should work on before we can even address ourselves. How do you feel about that? About that thought process? Let's start there.
I like the start of it. I like that it's an idea. I like starting everything has a starting point, and I think, like you said, when we're looking at starting and fixing and building the relationship with the person that we see in the mirror, I think that information to help build the person we see in the mirror has to come from somewhere. So I think where you're going with right now is you're speaking about whoever that person sees as their God, and who they believe in, whoever their higher is. And maybe that's where they're getting their information from in order to create a better version of the person that they see in the mirror. So if that's where we're going with this, then I'm definitely okay with it, and I like that.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I'll probably add to it though. I don't think it begins there. I think it begins with both parents, because both parents is kind of like the entrance that a young boy actually gets into when it comes down to understanding who he is. So when you see, and I think it's a special thing when a young boy see his father actually praying and worshiping God and things of that nature, and not so thinking so highly of himself. Um, displaying the characteristics that uh, a God fearing man would display, and also behaving as a God fearing husband would behave within a household. And I think that becomes the rite of passage into him understanding not only how important God is to his parents, but now how important God can become to him. So I think it's a combination of both. It's not just the idea of who the Most High is, it's also how my parents reverence him.
Coach,
So
if I can add, with that more of a question, would that be in addition to the lack of that as well? Like, would that be like if I didn't grow up with parents and I didn't see these things, would that be part of that as well? Lack of. Okay.
Yeah, I would have to say yeah, because part of it is modeling what you understand. And so if I don't see it modeled as a man, now I'm doing it based upon my own perspective of what I read out the book and then going through trial and error and all of that other great stuff. So hopefully I got great male mentors in my life. But in the absence of a God fearing father in the home, it's very difficult for that young man to understand what that looks like.
I actually like where this open discussion is going. So if I can apply just a little bit. So are you saying, and I just want to get it correct, I believe I know the answer, but I'm asking it on purpose. So are you saying that my father's and my mother's relationship with God is more of a factor to my relationship with the Father, or is it more? Or I know the answer, so please don't beat me up. Or is it more of the strengthening for my journey as a child into having a better relationship with myself? I know
Well,
your niche answer because I know the pettiness
yeah,
inside
yeah,
you. I want to
yeah,
say one word, but
yeah.
please dive a little bit if you could.
So sure. My initial answer is both. It's like,
I thought you was gonna
Garfield,
say
you
yes.
I started to, but I changed it up a little bit, right? Garfield, you work in the school system, and you know this to be true. And if I say something wrong, please correct me. Especially in the younger years, those parent teacher conferences to where, they actually mean something. I think one of the most important things that a parent can do is actually go to the school, meet the children's teachers and things of that nature, because it's almost like you're giving that child permission to have a good relationship with that student. I mean, with that parent. I mean, with that teacher, right? So now when I see my parents, smiling and talking and shaking hands and having a great conversation with the teacher, it's almost like me as a young boy. It's like, okay, the teacher have my parents' blessing, therefore I can open up and participate and do all those things. And secondly, it's also maybe a small degree of fear that my teacher may pick up the phone. So I'm gonna call your dad and say and let him know how you be showing off in class. So those things happen, and so I think it's the same thing when it comes to the Most High, right? It's like seeing what happens in that connection between them and the Most High and how they behave and how they honor him and how they worship him and so forth and so on. I think it's the exact same thing. I'm seeing it model in them, and by virtue of it modeling that behavior, now it kind of gives me permission to model it at an earlier age.
Got anything to add? Oh, hey, I
Oh,
concur. I thought you were about to go, my bad.
oh, no, no, no. I was just saying, yeah, I get it. I just, I second what Coach is saying.
Yeah, same here. Same here. Um, it plays. I think if we're honest, right, it all starts with our parents. Whether we're talking about relationship with God, relationship with ourselves, relationship with siblings, spouses, friends, we model the level of healthiness we see in our parents, in their relationships with each other, with their friends, you know. And let's be honest, in the world that we live in, most of us have experienced our parents having better relationships with their friends than with one another. And that's the sad true story for most of us. And I think that starts the conversation of healing, because most of us don't know that we need to heal from that. We a lot of us have inherited bad or toxic relationship habits when it comes to romantic in our community. But that's not where we are yet. Let's let me really back in. But I do agree. I do agree, right? Um, but streamlining it back to the higher level relationship. Now that we agree that it does start with our parents, but now when it gets to us, I do have a question. My question is, how do you believe a man's spiritual journey can affect their personal journey in life? Just personal journey, period.
I think the overall way that a man's spiritual journey affects their personal journey depends on where they are in their spiritual journey. You know, where I was in my spiritual journey when I was a teenager compared to in my 20s, compared to certain periods in my 30s, compared to um, my relationship. All of those different things like that played a factor in my overall personal journey. There were times where I was, 10 toes down and I was deep and I had, great relationship, a lot of understanding, a lot of things being accomplished. And then there were times where the relationship and the relationship during the journey was somewhat distant. And that right there affected the personal journey as well. So I think, to kind of start the conversation, a little bit more, go a little bit deeper, I think the way that it affects the way that a man's overall personal journey is affected because of his spiritual journey, it depends on where what phase or where he's at in his spiritual journey. And
Yeah,
I'm gonna
I
pin that right.
I'm sorry. I thought you were
Now I was
finished.
just saying I'm gonna put a pin in that right now.
Yeah. Um yeah, it's I think when you look at the how, I think when we look at the natural development of you know human behavior as it pertains to what the scripture teaches, going back in their earlier years, understanding what the law says, teaching them how to be disciplined per se, governing themselves and getting to the point to where they have a level of emotional regulation and emotional intelligence, getting to the point to where they understand boundaries, create boundaries, enforce boundaries, understanding what discipleship is all about, being a pillar or helping out neighbors, because that's something that is part of their family lineage. That's what they do. So helping neighbors, just doing little small chores for, the elderly in the community and things of that nature. I think that is a great segue into a person's personal journey. It's just like, and you guys seen it. Everybody wants to help or do something for a well-behaved child. But if your child ain't well behaved, don't bring your child to my house. I'm just gonna say it like that right there. If you have no control over your child, send them to a babysitter, do whatever. Just don't bring them here, and that's it. But if you have a well-behaved, well-mannered child, they are more than welcome to come. It's like almost like you start throwing things at them. Hey, you want something to eat? You want some Kool-Aid? You want this? You want that? Hey, I got a video game right there. Oh yeah, by the way, if you go look in the garage, I got a ball. You just start doing all those things. And I think that's the beginning of that personal journey, to where you look at a lot of adults who don't have that discipline. It's like you don't even want to be around them. It's because they never got it in their young formative years. So I think when you look at that spiritual journey, that development that starts with understanding what the law of God is, and then recognizing that the law of God pushes you to the necessity and the need for Christ, and then getting to the point of understanding how to love your neighbor like yourself. I think that part of that, I think that that personal journey now is engulfed by your spiritual connection with the Most High. And then because you love and reverence Him, you dare not taint that relationship with the way that you treat His people.
Um, I'm taking out my pen, adding more to it. You know, you mentioned hound, and you said some other things, and you said the word understanding, and that's where where I wanna go back to. You know, some of this how thing kind of depends on your understanding about things while you're in the journey. You know, I remember hearing a long time ago. You know, money is the root of all evil. So evil, right? So it's like, but that's not exactly what it says. You know, there's a couple of words before that says the love of money, but when you hear it and you don't do your own research and you don't do the reading and different things like that on your own, you have a different understanding on it. So while you're on your spiritual journey and your personal journey, you're going through this journey with a certain understanding that money is the root of all evil. So now when you dig a little bit deeper and then you get the real understanding of that passage or the whole more context around it, now you're in a different place in your spiritual journey, which is overall going to affect your personal journey. So that how part in there has to do in one aspect with the understanding of the information that you're consuming while you're on your spiritual journey as well.
So I love what both of y'all said. I think it was you, Coach, that brought up, or maybe both of y'all said something. Kind of, it ended up linking to our community behavior as well, right? Well, and I think that that's true in all spiritual journeys. That all these spiritual walks of life, these different religions out here have some form of mapping of how they behave within their community. But I do love how the scripture makes it clear, not just that we do things to do things, but we love our neighbors as we love ourselves. That is the highest level, I believe, uh, of, of 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 standard that man can have. For me to love you like I love me, the things I do every day is about me. All right. And if more people were honest, a lot of reasons why a lot of people do things for God is because they want to be blessed. Right. You know, and so the flip side on that is to love you as much as I love me, then I gotta want you to be blessed as much as I want to be blessed, right? But what role does that play when it comes to how I see me, or how I deal with me when the doors are closed and I'm not outside, I'm inside of my own space?
Okay. I think the initial thoughts that you hear a lot in social media is that you can't love somebody else until you learn to love yourself. I don't necessarily agree with that, um, because it kind of takes a self-centered perspective and put it on love. And so now what we do is we take love and we turn it the wrong way. It's like taking a shotgun and looking down the wrong end of it and pulling the trigger, to where love is an outward expression, always has been, always will be. So the thing that promotes and helps me to love you is that I've gotten to the point in my life where I rooted out all insecurities, all self-centeredness, and all of those things. So that means that I must spend time with him, whether it's in, reading his word, whether it's in prayer, whether it's in meditation, whatever it is you choose to do. And so now I don't take the approach to where I am blessing you because I'm looking to get blessed. I am blessing you because I'm looking to be a vessel for whatever it is that you're trying to do. not necessarily needing or desiring anything in return. I think the notion that we kind of confuse with faith is that we think faith is a part of a to-do list, to where in all actuality, and this is one of the points that I've made during last week's webinar, faith is not so much in me desiring a hopeful outcome based upon the future that I want, but that's ambition. So it's more so of me not losing focus in his character and doing what he asked me to do, not necessarily placing a need on him to bless me because I do, but understanding that he is not a man that he can lie. So it's not that I question his character, is that I have so much trust in his character that the things that I do, I don't even worry about whether he's going to bless me because I automatically know it's going to happen. So I don't do it for the blessing. I do it because he commanded me to do it.
Man, slide me that question again.
Not slide the question.
Oh no, I thought he had a follow-on question or something.
I did.
Yeah, the follow-on question.
Because so we kind of talked about the spiritual journey affecting the personal journey, and then when we kind of led into how we treat one another, how we treat our community, how we treat our elders, how, the people around us, and so how do we correlate how I treat you back to how I see me?
I think in the simplest form, we can go back to when we were kids and we were taught the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, or treat others the way you want to be treated. I think when we take that literally, we actually go out and practice those things. I think when you've gotten to a point in your life where you understand that, and then again, like I said, you actually apply it, I think that's where we're at. You know what I'm saying? Based off of the question that you asked, I think that helps right there. That's just in the simplest form. And I think a lot of things in theory, are simple, but not necessarily simple to do, because a lot of us, most of us that's on this panel and just listening and watching on Facebook or YouTube or Instagram or TikTok or LinkedIn, most of us heard that growing up. Most of us got taught that growing up. However, it didn't stick a lot of the times. It didn't play out. So back to your question, as we get older, sometimes we go back or we, get some more understanding and be like, hey, you know what? Maybe I just need to go back to the basics. Maybe I just need to treat people the way I want to be treated. And I think sometimes that's where where we are looking out for other people. And that correlation comes in there where we treat people the same way, or not necessarily better, but we treat people the way they should be, the way they should want to be treated.
Amen. I like that. I like both your answers. I really like it connected, and it made everything make sense together when we bring it back to treat others how we want to be treated. Right. And I know it's going to sound a little out there, right? But the concept of treating my neighbors according to how the word tells me to treat my neighbors, right? The law kind of, and if we're honest, the majority of the law, well, let's just keep it a buck. Christ made it clear. The whole law hinges on two things. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as you love yourself. The crazy part is that he said the second was likened unto the first. That means he didn't allow it to be superseding to another, because in fact, if you love the Most High, you keep His commandments, and His commandments is to love your neighbor as you love yourself. So by proxy of doing what he has commanded us to do, even towards one another, is keeping his commandments and staying in lockstep with him. So I do love that. I do love that. Man, we are the chat is moving. Can we, and I know I didn't put it in the chat, but can we bring up Miss Charlotte Jordan's last comment? I love this comment. She said, a willingness to be of help to others is not about what benefits I will receive. And I love this comment so much, probably for different reasons than other people would. And you know, the panel have a chance to touch it. But so much we big up all of these superstars and billionaires and all that other stuff for all their charitable giving, and you know, forever grateful. You know, never know when you were a recipient of it, right? But we lift them up, but there's tax cuts and tax breaks they get behind these large charitable gifts. There's something for me on the backside, right? Right. And this is why, at least for me, I never asked for a statement when I was giving tithing in church, because it wasn't about a tax write-off. I know, you know, people say, hey, but you got to get what they got, what they got for you. You don't lose your blessing, is what people used to always say. But that's me. What say you, boys? Hey, you get a car. Right.
To be honest, I see it both ways.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a problem with either mindset. I was at a church in Arizona. It was a command sergeant major was the pastor. He's still the pastor of the church today. Nonprofit, organizational. One of the things he talked about and taught us was, you know, that God is a God of order, and it's a nonprofit, and things need to be done the right way. He said there was a lot of people back in the day who wasn't doing the right thing with the people's money. So he wanted to make sure that he was accountable to God and accountable to the people. So we had those tax statements every quarter, and then at the end of the year that we did use for tax purposes. It wasn't meant as a write-off for me. It was just something that came with doing what I thought was right anyway, you know. So again, I see both sides of it. I don't think anybody would give you a call or anything about it. I think it's just, you know, how certain pastors choose to run their organizations. And I don't know necessarily which one is necessarily right or wrong. I guess just my point was just to say that there are different point of views on it, to your point. And I've been in churches like the one you're talking about, and then I've been in churches where everything was organized and everything was down to the penny.
Yeah, I get it. I don't knock nobody. I'm not gonna knock nobody. That was just my mindset behind it. I never needed it to write off, you know. But I never did it to get blessed. Once I understood the principle behind it, I didn't understand tithing early on in life because we always talked about being blessed or your money being cursed. From them two principles, I'm like, so I'm gonna give you my rent money, and by me, I was talking about my mama, because you know I used to watch people, and I'm just speaking from my perspective. Watch people give their last to write off a tax. Now, at one point, my mama was unemployed, so I didn't understand. She ain't had nothing to write off, you know. But you know, that's a whole nother rabbit hole. I'm not gonna jump there, but I definitely get it. I get it though. Let's roll to the next topic. Let's move on to the next topic. Oh, got something? I thought I heard somebody on mute. Topic is, what does it mean to me? Healing, self improvement, and social skills are pivotal to our ability to coexist, therefore, build healthy relationships. And any add ons or any thoughts about? And that topic is, what does it mean to me? You good?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
Alrighty. All right. So the first question I got in this topic is, why do you believe men avoid inner work? And that's what people always
Mm.
say, that we never do the inner work. Men avoid.
I guess with this statement, we have to assume that men avoid inner work. And for me personally, I don't think that men avoid it. I just think that men don't know that they need to do inner work until they get to a certain point in their life, or they're introduced to this concept that this is a thing to do. I never avoided inner work. I didn't know that inner work and self improvement was something that I should be doing. So for me, it was never avoiding it. But to go back to your question, why do men avoid inner work? I also do believe that there are a sector of men who do avoid it. And I think sometimes men avoid it because it's hard, because doing the inner work means that sometimes you have to read, sometimes you have to gather information, sometimes you have to do research, sometimes you have to get out of your comfort zone, sometimes you have to have uncomfortable conversations. So all of these things are involved, or just some of the pieces that go into doing the inner work to become a better version of yourself. So I do believe that sometimes men avoid it because it's just freaking hard, and it's consistent, and it's tedious. It all can be, because some of the stuff that I read that was good for me was boring. Certain books on financial, when I was didn't know anything about money, was boring, and I didn't understand symbols, and I didn't understand the verbiage. So there's a learning process, or there's a process that you have to go through, from the lack of understanding, the lack of knowledge, in order to a place of understanding. And I think it's a long journey, and I think most men know that avoid it. They understand that this is a long process. You talking about inner, but just take the inner out of it, and let's look at an outer work. We'll look at someone who's trying to lose 300 pounds or 200 pounds to go into the military or something. You know what I mean? They see that as a long journey. So the fact that they're going to have to get up and eat right and train and do all of these things is cause to avoid these types of things, because the work is going to be hard. So again, back to the question, I think sometimes men avoid the inner work because it's hard.
Okay. Um, I think there's some things to consider before we get to avoiding. I think what we perceive as avoidance is probably more along the lines of unawareness. I think a lot of men do not understand that inner work is a thing. And then once they become aware of it, yeah, I got it. We got this thing called the internet now, and you're hearing a lot of people talking about, therapy and healing and all this other great stuff, which is ultimately buzzwords, because a person has gone to counseling. But then you come out of counseling and you're just aware of the stuff that may be hindering you, but you haven't done anything to move yourself forward. You're just aware of those things. So it's like, before we get to avoidance, we have to consider awareness. Are they aware that inner work is a thing? Are they aware that they need inner work? And then secondly, are they aware of how to get the inner work? You can't fix the problem that you created. It's that simple. And I think a lot of times most people think they can, and they'll go, probably go, I don't know, go look at a YouTube video, or go I don't know, read a book or something of that nature and think by me looking at this video and reading the book is going to help. No, it doesn't work that way. I wish it did, but it don't work that way. Right. So but to Garfield's point, I do believe that there are some people who are avoiding inner work, and those people to me are easy to spot because they blame everybody else for the things or the situations that they find themselves in. So, looking at this overall and coming to a better understanding of the entirety of this question, why do you believe men avoid inner work? I think in most cases, it's the different levels of awareness. And then finally, once we tackle the different levels of awareness, now we get into the potential avoidance. And let's just be completely honest. A lot of the work that people need, they can't afford it. I'm just going to be as honest and straightforward as I possibly can be. They can't afford that level of work. But here's the other side of it. If you're that person that's saying you can't afford the inner work, I got another perspective for you. You can't afford not to do it. Because if you choose not to, then you're just going to keep recycling the same thing over and over again.
I agree. I'm with you there. I do believe what both of you guys are saying. I think the avoidance for those who avoid are more so goes back to this conversation of what we were taught and who taught us what a man looks like. I promise you, I can still remember to this day every time I was punched in the chest and told I was a boy. Right? And it was never my father that ever said anything like that to me. My father used to tell me more stuff like, "Hey," especially when early on growing up in the Bronx, you get out of a fight and you come home or you come back down the street and you cry. My father used to look at me like, "What you crying for? You cry later. Go back out there and finish what you started." He didn't believe in coming home with L's. I just put that out there. But but it taught a new concept to me, which was, I ain't got time to worry about what I'm feeling on the inside. I got to go handle this business. And I took that approach in life. So it's not that I was avoiding, and I'm not saying that anything y'all said was wrong. I'm not saying that I wasn't avoiding because I thought it was hard or for any other. I did it because I thought that's what men were supposed to do. We're supposed to avoid all these feelings and all this other stuff, but then didn't understand either why I had anger management issue, because I wasn't dealing with nothing, But go ahead. I got to follow on to what y'all was saying. But go ahead, Coach.
No, I was just going to say that's the category of awareness that I'm talking about. It's this. It all is lumped together in awareness on one side of the spectrum or the other. Whether it's I don't know what it is, I don't know whether or not I need it, I don't know how to employ it, I don't know where to go to get it. Like in that scope that's that vast scope of awareness. I'll be honest with you, I never heard of inner work until I got into my late 20s, early 30s. Now you got people who are being aware of inner work in their teenage years because they have this thing called the internet.
And then, like I mentioned, that long laundry list of inner work that men get. You go on the internet and it'll say, these are the 15 things that you need to do to work on yourself. And one of them, like you mentioned, may be counseling. One may be some sort of coaching. And if you look at the prices on that for anybody that's worth their salt, it's going to be kind of pricey. But like Coach said, you can't afford not to at the same time. And then you looking at, okay, they telling people, well, you need to avoid women and you need to avoid these people and avoid this. And some of these things that they're avoiding are relationships that they have. You know what I mean? So you're telling people, I'm trying to do this inner work, but this inner work mean that you can't hang with Gaddy no more because Gaddy like to go to the club every weekend and chase skirts, and you on your path to try to go get a wife. You know what I mean? And trying to get your life together. You know what I'm saying? So some of this reasons why, again, the inner work has not been done because of some of the things that you have to avoid while you're doing the inner work. Again, if I'm trying to get myself together and I'm trying to do this inner work, trying to be a better person, and got to keep wanting to go to the club, and now we can't hang like we want to. I don't know if I'm ready to give up my relationship with my homeboy for the last 12 years. You know what I'm saying? But that may be what I need to do that inner work, but I don't know. But again, like I said, I think sometimes people avoid inner work because it may cost them certain relationships that they may want to hold on to, including family.
Okay.
And I guess, hold on real quick. I maybe also want to say, I'm not saying that they have to, but maybe that is what some people are being told to do. I hear on TikTok and different places, I've heard people mention, you need to cut these people off in your family. And I get those, but sometimes there's not enough context around these, some of these talking points in a 30-second clip.
Right. If anybody is staking their life in relationships based upon sound clips, for God and country. That's become my motto, for God and country. Because what do you want me to do? You listen to 10 seconds of a clip and made a life decision based on it. But so let's go back to this awareness. Where did the lack of awareness come from? Like, who are we bringing this back to the parental thing that we talked about earlier? Like, are we going back there? Societal? Did education not catch up when we were kids, or what? Where are we at? Where do we address this at what level?
You really want to do this? You really want to do that, huh? Let's start off. First and foremost, it was a cultural thing. I call it what it really was. It was a cultural thing. Culturally, we had no idea that inner work was a thing. Even moving, understanding that it's a cultural thing, it is only natural that we, from a family perspective, we were ignorant of the thing. Therefore, we couldn't teach the thing. Emotional intelligence, again, maybe more so of the terminology being used, but it was not a foreign thing to see people literally lose their stuff when it comes down to things not going their way, whether it be out in public, whether it be in the household. And then you think it's the thing to do when things don't go your way or whatever that looks like. So initially it's a cultural thing, which it de facto is a family thing. So yes, the family is, I would say, because the family is the foundation of the community for the church, so forth and so on, right? So yes, it is a family level ignorance. And then what we started doing is we started superseding education, degrees per se, thinking that would give us the inner work that we need. No, it just gave us degrees. That's it. Having a higher degree does not do inner work for you. Inner work is an intentional thing. Like, I love the fact that Unc mentioned, you go on the internet and these people say, do these 15 things. That's not inner work. That's a task list, right? So you're just going to do those 15 things thinking you're going to be a different person, but no, you're just going to be the same person doing those 15 things over and over again, hoping that you're going to get a different outcome. And you may see something, because the 15 things might be 15 different things that you're doing in 2026. So what happens in 2027? You're going to do 15 different more things? But here's the sad part about it. You already have a cap on your outcome because the inner work was never done. So you're only going to receive the output of the level of work that you do at your level of understanding, which comes from the work that you've done internally. So it's almost like second nature. So yes, family, culture, community, all ignorance. And again, ignorance is not a bad thing. It just means we didn't know.
Yep. I'm with Coach. Lack of awareness came from all those things. And to include the application of those things, because some of those things were there. Like, again, I said, doing to others. Like, we all taught that, but where was the application? Where was the enforcement behind ensuring that we were actually treating people the way we wanted to be treated? So yes, Coach is absolutely right. All of these sectors, but there's also culturally, we lack the dedication or consistency to apply these rules and knowledge and these different things. We just didn't apply them. Like again, we was taught these things, we ain't apply them, and you see them all over. Look at false information that was taught, or I don't want to say false, it was sometimes misunderstood information that was shared throughout the pulpits across all different places. You know, sometimes we got bad information from bad teachers, and that's, I ain't saying that that's okay, but for some of us and for some people, that's the story. You know, sometimes we didn't get the right information growing up. And again, I'm just probably co-signing and double talking exactly what Coach was talking about. So I'm gonna hush up and I'm gonna get ready for the next question.
I love it. I love where your brothers are going with this. Can we bring up Lisa is throwing bangers out there, y'all, in the comments. But I like this comment. She said, "It is so worth it being turned outside in to understand the way, and if you get it, you get it. That we should go." It, man, everything that these brothers are talking about, the work that they're talking about, doing it the right way. You know, some of us started late in life. Some of us was forced into counseling young and became an adult and avoided it for the next 15 years because he didn't want to sit on no more couches and talk about stuff he didn't want to talk about. All right. Because as men, who want to talk about our feelings? Who want to get on here and hold an episode about my feelings, my inner work, my me, as how I love myself as men? You know, it's not a topic we really hear men discuss as men. You know, and as men, I'll stand my brothers up next to any other men out here. Like, these are genuine, real secure in themselves men that have been through war, been through raised children, about to start helping mentor parents on as grandparents, right? You know, and that's even for my brother Roland, right? I'll stand these brothers up against any of these men on any of these platforms, right? And I'm not talking about on no boxing, fighting type stuff. We grown, right? But just as men, but we can have a conversation. I'm telling you, it feels uncomfortable when we do it, but I love that comment, Lisa. When you start doing it, especially when you're doing it, when you're following the way, and the Most High gets involved with the change, it feels so organic. But anything before we move to that comment?
No, I just wanted to put up a poll because I want, the feedback of the comment section. Whatever your answer is, type the number that coincides with your answer. What is one thing you must fix to have a healthy relationship? This is men and women, so don't think this is a gender specific question. Again, what is one thing you must fix to have a healthy relationship? Type 1, 2, or 3. Please don't write the word. All right, continue, sir.
Oh, I'm ready for this poll. I'm ready to see this one. Let's go to the next question. So the question is, why is validation so important to men? After I sent this and I went back through my notes again today, I want to ask it like this. I'm gonna leave it posted like this, but I want to ask it like this: is validation important to men? And if so, why?
Yep. I don't know why, it just is. I think we just wired this way. Well, I can say that for me, I can only speak for myself, man. I need validation. Now, what I need validation in has changed over the years. Back in the day, when I was out hunting, there were certain areas of my life that I needed validation in. Now there's certain areas of my life, certain areas that I've worked on, I don't need validation in. But for me, certain validation, and also depends on validation doesn't changes. I also believe that validation changes. What's the word I'm trying to think of? At some point, I wanted validation from people. Now I don't necessarily look for validation from people. You know what I'm saying? I don't need people to necessarily validate me. And this goes back to that person in the mirror. So I don't know. I just think that sometimes men are just wired that way. Because I think for me, in a short sense, validation is in a sense nothing more than kind of like proof. So if I'm doing my math work and I want to know, I want my work graded now because I want my work validated that I got, X 90 plus percentage correct or something like that. I don't like to wait for things. I don't know if that's all men, but I'm definitely like that. I need validation. I don't know why it's important to me. I don't know if men are wired this way. I don't know if it's just me. I don't know if it's all three of us. I am definitely looking forward to what you guys have to say on this. But for me, my answer right now is I don't know why it's important, but for me, it's just important. As I think about this with my sons, maybe they were like this kind of a little bit growing up too. And I don't know if that was environmental or if that was through me and my influence, or was if that was how they are naturally. So again, looking forward to what you brothers have to say about this.
So the answer is yes. I would start off by saying over the years, the word validation has gotten a bad rap. And I believe that the word validation has gotten a bad rap simply because of the why. But let's just be honest. And again, I love doing this because it makes sense when we do it this way. In the profession, in the job setting, there are certain validations that you have to go through in order to be certified to do certain things. Why is validation important to men? Is because it is the evidence that we need in time and space to understand what we believe, what we're thinking, what we perceived from the environment is authentically what we think, what we believe it is. Case in point, a husband and a wife, right? Listen, I don't care who you are. You can disagree, agree, I don't really care. I understand that you two said I do, but behavior is going to validate what that actually looks like moving forward. When that behavior shows up to be different, then you don't view her as your wife. It's almost like you can view her as an adversary because she can literally fight against you. So she is validating what she believes as it pertains to marriage, right? It's important to that man to understand what that looks like. So when we look at the word validation, we need to stop viewing it as such a bad word because it is not. It is the evidence that you need in time and space so that you can discern exactly what you're observing as what you believe.
I like that I wasn't off. I was like, man, if I'm wrong, I was like, if Coke got the other side. But the thing about it, if you had a different side, I was so open to hearing it. You know what I mean? I was open to hearing a different perspective. Maybe Gaddy has one.
No, so that's the reason why I reworded it for you brothers, because I wasn't sure if you was going to see it the way I saw it, which is yes. So I don't have a different perspective. I'm with y'all. That's why I asked the question the way I did originally. Why is it so important?
I would even add, if a person has a different perspective, look at the reason or the source from where their perspective come from. Like, let's be completely honest. If I don't need evidence as it pertains to the environment that I am who I believe I am, is that not a very self-centered approach to reality?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Man, Coach was talking on this segment, but I'm sorry. I got lost in what you were saying just now. And not just what you were saying. I don't know, Coach got a way of saying things. That's why I don't like going behind him when we both on the pedal, because
man, that can be good and bad. I'm trying to tell you.
I'm telling you, right? Because it's like if we got the same thought and I say it first, then when he said it, like, did he just say something different? Because I'm pretty sure that was close to the same
Mm-hmm.
thing. It just came out different.
There you go. That's what it was.
All jokes aside, man, let's look at this poll real quick. Did everybody vote? Did everybody put a number?
Believe so. Yeah, I believe so.
Can we, before you go, Coach, can we highlight? I think it was Nick D who gave her order, or was she just mentioning it? Because I see that you did the same thing. I think they
Yeah,
just.
yeah. Maya said she was on the phone. She couldn't see it. The poll.
Oh, okay.
So we was just telling her what it was.
He's a little way. Look. Right, Wordsmith. But I tell you. So what say you brothers about the outcome? I think community, which was it? Emotional intelligence, I think number 2 got the most votes.
So I initially went with communication skills. This was my initial thought. But then after rereading it as I was taught to do, I was like, well, communication skills is very important. But I know a lot of people have good communicational skills, but they don't have no emotional intelligence. So I believe if you have the emotional intelligence, you will be able to figure out and learn communication skills and everything else. You know what I'm saying? I don't necessarily, yeah. I believe that if you have the emotional intelligence, then you can work on the other 3.
Yeah, I'll go next just because Coach is the one that gave us the poll, you know. But I'm gonna rock with my sister because I think.
Which one you going with?
I'm going with 3.
3, okay.
I'm gonna tell you why. Because to exercise the proper emotional intelligence, to me, is not just the exercise; it's the knowledge, all right? Because I'm using the word intelligence, right? But the ability to exercise that emotional intelligence properly is, especially for men, is to be vulnerable in that space. Is it not? Even my communication skills. What am I communicating with you other than, hey, you want to go eat? Because when you hear a lot of these, especially on social media, a lot of these relationships and these couples are arguing on social media about one simple, stupid question: what you want to eat? And that's really making and breaking relationships out here.
Cheesecake Factory. My bad.
Hey.
I couldn't help it.
He getting walked out on
so if I'm reading this question, I'm gonna go back to it and then I'm gonna go back, say it again. So the one thing, if I could take, I'm gonna rearrange the question, but I'm making it make sense again to me. If there's one thing, the top of the list that we're gonna work on in our relationship, me and my wife, me and Shell, right now, the number one thing we're gonna work on, if we got these 4 things to work on, I'm going with emotional intelligence. You saying you and your relationship, the number one thing you and your person would, first thing you doing is working on vulnerability. That's your top priority.
Yes, because vulnerability depends upon. So I think we've talked about. I'm gonna try to be as smooth with my words like Coach this time, because you know we always got to come for you because we love you, brother.
Always.
But when I look at the word vulnerability, not only do I believe that creates my ability to communicate properly with my partner, for me to exercise my emotional intelligence in that relationship, but vulnerability is more about creating an environment that is conducive for this healthy relationship to take place. Because, and I'm speaking from the perspective of men. I know Lisa, I know we said that this is not a gender specific, but here's why I'm saying I'm speaking from the gender of men, because vulnerability, we both have to work on it. I have to work on becoming vulnerable, but men are only going to be vulnerable in a space that they trust themselves to be vulnerable in. So both of us have to work on creating this environment for us to be vulnerable with one another, so that we can be more communicative about our emotions with one another, with how we feel about how our relationship is going, so that we can walk this walk together. If we don't, we could do all this talking and talking about emotional intelligence all we want, but that environment is not conducive for vulnerability. Eventually we're going to hit a spot to where it becomes hard to talk. I hope that makes sense.
I love both of your responses. Really, I do. There is no wrong answer to this, by the way. Um, I want to make sure I'm saying that as people are listening. There is no wrong answer to this. But there's one unsung hero on this whole chart, and it is the surprise. It's the sleeper. It's relatability, which to me, I am very much surprised that no one chose relatability, because relatability is the gateway to the other three. I always say it all the time. The relationship is the ultimate training ground. And if we do it right, I don't have to create the environment. The environment is present in the relationship. So then I fall into the environment because I am governed, because I am not only governed, like we go back to those things we talked about previously, right? I was brought up the right way. I understand the law of the Most High. So I exercise personal discipline, all those other great things. I've accepted the gift of God, which is salvation through Christ Jesus. I practice loving my neighbor as my, all those things. And so in order for me to relate to you in different situations, circumstances, things of that nature, it is going to require a different skill set, especially as we grow, especially as we get more mature in the word. So I'm with you on the vulnerability piece, but maybe I can be vulnerable. I just can't articulate it well. And at the end of the day, I can't articulate. In my mind, I think I'm saying the right things in time and space, but she ain't receiving it right. So it's like, now I got to go back and think about what I say and how I say it, so forth and so on. And maybe she is sharing something with me, but my facials is telling everything that I'm thinking, but my mouth is saying something different. So now she can't even believe what I'm saying because my face ain't matching my mouth. That's more of an emotional intelligence thing. So the relatability piece is the thing that is teaching me what I need to learn in time and space as it pertains to our interaction in this relationship space. And again, I'm not saying nobody's answer is wrong. For me, it shocked me that nobody chose relatability, because I think that's the unsung hero.
I knew you was going to say that too. When I saw nobody chose, I knew you was going to go there. I tell you, everything in me said it was a setup, but I didn't. I took the bait still. But you said there's no wrong answer. But let me tell you why you're wrong. No, joking a little bit, right? No, and I don't think anybody's wrong. I agree with you. I just think that I'm right on this one. But the reason why. And I'm glad you did say what you said about relatability, because I realized that I don't see relatability defined in my mind the same way that you do. And here's why I say that. Because in order for me to get into this relationship to the point to where we're exercising these right here, and I'm talking about with a partner, right? Not just even in friendship. I mean, I'm gonna go that far and say even in friendship, I think there's a level of relatability that that me and you have to have with one another for this relationship to hit that level. If that's making sense, because I'm thinking, and I'm just in my mind, I only have to be relatable to you in this relationship. I only have to be relatable to her in this relationship. But I think before I commit this relationship to exercising these right here for real, I think we've already determined if we're relatable enough to pursue.
But that would be more of compatible, not relatable. Relatability changes over time. That's why I say this is the unsung hero, because here's the deal. If I go into relatability thinking that my idea of communication, I'm good there, my emotional, I'm good there, vulnerable, I'm good there, then what I'm saying is that, you can't teach me anything about communication skills. I'm the best communicator that I know until you meet another good communicator. Then you'll realize that, maybe I don't communicate as well as I thought I did because they just frustrated me by asking me a question. So that's why I say the whole relatability thing is the unsung hero, because you'll learn a lot about yourself in the midst of trying to be more relatable.
My pushback with Coach was the same thing as Gaddy just had. I'm just like, well, if we got together day one, we was married for X amount of years and we got divorced. Well, we were relatable at some point, but then when you use the word compatibility, I was like, oh, it just shut everything back down again.
So as you say compatibility, I was like,
but however, I am with Coach and Nat Gaddy on the fact that it's more all of these, and there is not one that's a priority. And the reason why, I think it depends on the relationship and where you're at in your relationship when these things happen. When you have an issue in your relationship and there's this whatever thing that it needs to be fixed, it may be an emotional intelligence issue that you really need to work on. It may be the vulnerability piece that you need to work on. So again, I think that if we looking at relationships in general, we just three of us up here, like-minded gentlemen, we all just chose three different things. However, I do think at the same time that depending on where you're at in your relationship may determine which one should be the priority at the time. And that's just
listen, let me tell you something. If I ever do a crime, it's gonna be with that man right there. Because I know he's gonna say the same thing. He literally said the same thing I just said. I ain't got a word. He got me. He got right. I'm going to be good tonight.
And when y'all say it like that, right? I'm thinking of it like, especially when you said that all three of us, like-minded, chose three different components, and maybe we're looking at it from the space of where our failed relationships failed.
So
I think
no, go ahead.
I'm looking at mine just as if I was to, based off my probably just how I think about things, right? I'm just thinking that if I'm looking at a priority, I'm thinking that I need to have the emotional intelligence to be able to figure out the communication styles, and then I need emotional intelligence to be able to understand how to be vulnerable. You know what I'm saying? And I just honestly just threw out relatability altogether. I'm just like, well, I don't need to be friends with you to have a good, healthy relationship, especially if it's like a work relationship. You know what I mean? I can have a healthy relationship without relatability, or can I? You know what I'm saying? I don't know. So I just kind of threw out relatability altogether in my thought process. And, even though I said I read this twice, maybe I should have read it a third time. Maybe I should have read it thrice.
All I'm saying is it's a reason why it's called a relationship.
Yeah.
In order for you to be in relationship with the other person, you need to be able to relate to the other person, which means that I can't just go and do the same thing because I'm good. That's why I don't like the very jaded perspective of love languages, right? That's why I always talk about the notion of love languages from the perspective of it being awareness for yourself, not something for you to go project on your mate and say, hey, my love language is physical touch. Let's go. No, you know what I'm saying? Right. Now that I know my love language is physical touch, I got some other ones I got to work on. Why? Because I need to be able to be more widely spread. I need to be more open to the other things. So when she comes in and she is highly emotional, I need to understand how to bring her down off of that emotional high. When she comes in and she is extremely talkative, I need to, depend upon how I relate to her, I need to understand how to pull the meat and sift through all the other stuff. And so I can understand exactly what she is saying. But all of that is relatability.
I love it. Man, I got so much more on this part, but can we bring up the question before we leave this? Can we bring up the question in the chat? Miss Atlas Keys to Keys Realty. She said, is this question based on one personal assessment of what we individually think we currently need to work on?
Yes, that's why I said there wasn't no wrong answer.
Yeah.
I agree, which is
You
why
know,
I
like
asked
based
that
off
follow-up
of,
question.
yes, I said based off where we are in our relationship, we may have great communication skills right now, and our communication may be straight spot on. Our issue may be we're not being vulnerable enough, you know? So it depends on what we got going on in our relationship at the time.
Right, right, man. I love where this went, but we gotta move. We gotta roll. Let's roll to the next segment. As time is getting away from me. So the three internal relationships men must heal. Right. These are, I'm going to put up uh, the 3 points, or not the 3 points, but the three relationships that men must heal. And I'm gonna let you brothers choose which one. And if time permits, if you want to go, if you want to pick up the third one, we can. Uh, but we don't want to put the question up yet, but just choose which one you want. So A, relationship with identity. B, relationship with emotions. Or C, relationship with discipline. Who wants to go first? Oh,
I go.
okay.
I go with let me go with discipline for 2000.
And I knew you was gonna be the one to choose discipline, right?
Yeah.
So relationship with discipline says if he can't lead himself, he can't lead anyone else, right? So the question is, can I be disciplined in the wrong thing? And what would that look like?
Mm. Can you be disciplined in the wrong thing, and what would that look like? Absolutely. You can be disciplined in the wrong thing. Discipline is just um being able to, in a sense, being able to highly focus and accomplish and do something. Like you be disciplined at running, right? So say for someone is really disciplined at running and all they do is just run. Well, actually, all they do is run. So they just run, 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 run. But that's all they're doing. If they're running, but they're not doing all of the other work. So someone can be disciplined to the point to where they're so highly hyper focused on something that it could cost them relationships. It can cost them a lot of other different things that may help with their overall quality of life. So if you're disciplined, and like I said, it could be running, it could be working out, it could be your job. There's a lot of people who are very disciplined at their job and they spend 12, 14, 16 hours a day, 5 days, 6 days, sometimes 7 days a week, really working on something. And then they get divorced. They don't have relationships with their kids. They don't have friends anymore. They wake up and they're by themselves and they wondering how they got there. It's because they were highly disciplined in something that didn't necessarily. It could be for a bunch of different things, but at the end of the day, they were disciplined in the wrong thing. And like I said, the way what that would look like is that it could cost them a lot of other important things that they may have or want in their life.
I love that. I love how you. So let me ask you this, and then we're gonna move. We'll go. So let's take let's narrow the scope, right? Let's take running, right? Because you're a runner. Um, can I over focus and overtrain in the wrong thing as a runner? And so for instance, if I'm a cross country runner or I'm training for a marathon, can I train in running and still train for the wrong thing to prepare me for a marathon?
Can you train in the wrong thing and still prepare you for the marathon?
In the scope, so it's I want to do a marathon.
Mm-hmm.
Can I train? Can I do a training that's still running training,
Mm-hmm.
but it ill prepares me for like it prepares me for
Yeah.
100 meter, but it don't
Yeah,
don't maintain that
absolutely.
for a
You can
long
get
time.
out there and do sprints and hit workouts, and you go out there and go out there and try to bust down on 26 miles, and you tap out at 8. You know what I'm saying? So you can be, yeah, you got to train in the right areas for whatever it is that you wanna achieve in. You know, there are some skills and some things that you can do that can be cross related, but it's very challenging for something as cardiovascular heavy as
Marathon.
running a marathon. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's on the low end for an average person on the 4 hours. That's moving 4 hours. So and with training, people doing 5 hours, 4.5 training for 4 months with a good base. So yeah, definitely be disciplined in the wrong thing.
So what I'm
Okay.
hearing you say is that discipline alone ain't gonna cut it.
Discipline alone ain't gonna cut it either. Nope.
Love it. I love it.
Don't go out there and don't bring no salt tablets or no water. Hit mouth 12.
I don't know, man. Pick one. I don't. It doesn't.
Because it pick one.
It don't matter for me.
It doesn't
Let
really
me see.
matter.
What we want for coach? I'm gonna let the.
Hold on, I know which one.
I was about to say, I was gonna let the first comment to give me.
I want number 4 because I wanna know about that ambient noise.
Oh, that's actually number 2, isn't it?
They be relationships
Yeah.
with emotions.
Yeah, number 2. Yeah,
B.
relationship
Yeah.
with emotions. All right. So, with all the experts out there on men's relationship with emotions, how do I filter through the ambient noise and figure out what to do with how I feel?
So number 1, everybody who claimed to be an expert and an expert. That's for starters. Um, I think sometimes what we need to do is qualify the individuals that we're listening to, so that we can understand that they know what they're talking about. A lot of times, what you're hearing is somebody repeating something that they heard somebody else say. Ask questions. That's what I like. Do not be afraid to ask questions. Like I always say, even when we talk about whether you're getting a real estate agent or whether you're, getting any type of professional, it's not that they're qualifying you to get your money. You should be qualifying them to give you their money. So that being said, you need to qualify some of these quote unquote so-called overnight experts that got a certificate online and didn't have any hours to support the work that they say that they're experts in doing. Um, then I think the other piece, when it comes down to figure out what to do with how I feel, um, my initial thing is do nothing. I think that's the first thing that you need to understand. Like, do not allow emotions to make decisions for you. I think that's one of the biggest flaws that we have embraced over the past, I don't know, 10 or more years. We get emotional. We've been given a narrative that said one group over here are good with emotions and the other group over here, they're terrible with emotions. And therefore, this person is defined by their emotions, and therefore you can't silence that person because they're emotional and blah, 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 and this, that, and the third. And then this person is made to feel less than because they're not in quote unquote in tune with their emotions. But I beg to differ. I think what we're talking about is the expression of the thing, not so much as the evidence of the thing. And just because your expressions look different than my expression does not necessarily mean my expression is wrong. Do you want it to look different? Yes, I know you want it to look different, but maybe there's some other stuff that's behind the scene that is preventing me to open up at the level that you quote unquote desire me to open up. Your desire does not define righteousness. So I think in the big scheme of it all, do nothing with the emotions. Spend time trying to understand it. Understand what the emotion is trying to tell you about you. That's the answer to this. Do not get to the point to where you start reacting, making decisions, and moving according to how you feel. Your emotions are indicators and indicators alone. So when you feel a particular type of way, sit with yourself, ask yourself some very direct questions about the emotions, wait for the answer, and then once you get the answer now, that should define what you should do from that point on.
Man, I think Coach woke up today and said, I'm going to figure out how to sound as smooth as I can today. And I feel like he was like this all day, talking to them officers. He was, listen here, Lieutenant, let me tell you what you need to do. Right? Because he on it today. I love it. I love it though. Because to be honest with you, I think, and this is just a side note, I think that persona commands more attention to what's being said, to what we're used to in our community. You know, I think our community is so hung on the King and Malcolm X era that we all want to sound loud and boisterous or sound savvy, like those gentlemen. But to be able to speak with poise and make people focus on what you're saying more than just the fact that you're talking. So I do appreciate that, Coach. Last segment, because we got to get ready to let you guys go home and hang out with the family. So with that said, we're going to talk about how does it work. All right. So Proverbs 4:7, which is my favorite scripture, it was my memory verse when I was like preteen, right? It says, wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom. With all that getting, get understanding. So it's really, how do we put this stuff together? Right? How do we go from, like we talked about before, how do we go from emotional and having the intelligence of of our emotions and actually how to apply them properly, kind of like we're coaching. So when we hear things like emotional intelligence, the question really is, what does it mean? What does it really mean?
I'll jump out there first on this one. I think two things need to be understood. And I think for the most part, we kind of have a decent understanding. But like I tend to say, words mean things, right? You are a walking antenna. All you do is sense. You gather information from the environment, right? But just as though you gather information, you also send information out as well. That is actually called emoting, right? Energy in motion, emotion, right? The other side of it is intelligence. Intelligence means is simply, I mean, and I hate to say it, it is the ability to learn and adapt. That's what intelligence means. It's not smarts. And that's what a lot of people seem to think. Intelligence simply means to learn and adapt. That's why you have AI, artificial intelligence. It is adapting based upon the information that you're giving it. So now, when we look at, what does it really mean when it comes down to emotional intelligence? Well, it literally means that you extract information from the environment, you learn from that information, and you adapt accordingly. So again, not about how I feel, not about me projecting how I feel. It's about self awareness. It's about self regulation. It is about adequate self expression. It is also about social expression. It is also about understanding how not to allow someone else to project their emotions on you and change the context or the environment in how you're feeling.
Coach said it, man. I mean, pretty much the ability to be able to manage your emotions. When things get high, can you regulate? And I know a lot of us, is all three of us. That was something that we definitely had to learn and have some experience with while we're in the military. We in the army, and we telling soldiers to charge that mountain. We can't be sitting back there shaking in our boots. You know what I'm saying? We got to be able to manage the fear that we have, because we have soldiers that we have to lead. And if they can sense and like you was talking about facial expression, they can see those facial expressions and stuff like that on our face, because we can't manage our emotions. So we're yelling and screaming when we should be directing and teaching and instructing. Then those things really can affect a lot of different people. So again, ditto to everything that Coach said, and I hope I didn't add anything that destroyed any of his words or to cause anybody to think anything in a different way.
Oh no, you definitely added too. I love it. I love it. Um, and I'm trying to move along. In this one, I feel like y'all would get a kick out of this one. But what role does my current or my previous partners play in knowing what I need to work on?
Zero. No.
I'm telling you, this has become a
It's not.
conversation lately. So
It's
that's why.
not zero. However, for this one, because we're talking about partners here, right here, I think this is definitely based off of what these two individuals have talked about and discussed, right? Because there are some people who feel like, look, every time I'm out of line, I want you to say something and get me back on track. Some people like, look, you're a grown bro, you're a grown dude, you're a grown woman. You need to figure it out. You know what I mean? You need to grow, and as long as you're constantly working on yourself, you're going to figure these things out. So, and then when you look at roles, you know what I mean? When I say that, you got to be careful about roles, right? Because when we're looking at someone's role, are you holding someone else responsible for overall your part in certain stuff? So I think when we're looking at roles, that's why I say you have to, is very much based off of, I believe right now that it's based off of what conversations have y'all talked about in y'all relationship as far as knowing what to work on. Um, I think some people are very comfortable saying, "Hey, look, babe, you know, probably need to work on the way you speak, the way you talk, whatever it may be." And I think some relationships, it's like, so I think, I don't know, let me shut up because I know I'm about to start babbling here in a minute and repeating myself. So
So Smooth. I see what you did there, Smooth. Right. This is the
avoidance.
same question. Right. This is the same question we answered. This is the validation question in real time. That's all it is. So when you look at what role did your current or previous partner play in knowing what I need to work on, they may not have known it, but they were the validation of it, whether they actually knew it based upon what their own level of understanding was, or whether they responded to it and they couldn't articulate it what it was, what it was, good, bad, or indifferent. They were the validation of the thing that I needed to work on. So even in the midst of, and this is the thing, like you guys know how I am, I don't care if they did 99%. You still got to own your 1%. So it's like we'll reject our 1% to talk about their 99%. And that is always in error. So that's why I say that whether they knew it or not, that part doesn't matter. The bottom line is that they were the validation of the thing that I need to work on. And if I paid close attention, I had enough evidence to know, like, whenever she said this, you just got warm and your heart started beating fast and you started rapid breathing. You was ready to get at her. But even if she was wrong, that's still something you need to work on. So that's the thing.
Yeah. And that's my answer to this question. Right. It goes back, definitely goes back to validation. I really knew when I reworded that question, I really felt like at least one of y'all was gonna say no. so we could double back. But but we like-minded, and that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing, because I think we have enough podcasts of people with opposing ideas. 'Cause I think that's good for entertainment, but it's not good for growth. Right. And so I do appreciate the fact that brothers can get on here and speak from the same perspective and actually we just have different perspectives of how to achieve, maybe, or a different way of showing it, which works for a different array of people. Right. So but I agree right there. A lot of the stuff that I have to work on, I think I knew I had some inkling of an idea at the minimum that I needed to work on this thing. But she just validated it. Or if she didn't validate it, the friends that cut me off validated it. Somewhere in our life, I think we have to get past this point. I could sit here and we could have a whole 12-hour discussion about how much wrong was done, right? And I think when you're the one that was left, it gets more frustrating, right? Because you're like, and I put up with all of this, and you left because of this. Like you start thinking in your mind, but here's a reality that this that she left for, I have to sit with and ask myself, was she was this true? Is this what I gave? And can I walk into another relationship giving that same thing? 9 times out of 10, the answer is no. We have to do that work. Do I got time to ask the very last question? I want to get this question. I really want to get y'all answer, your perspective too. So the last question I got is, and I can't spell it for some reason. What does it mean to find myself? Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think that's something that people say. I kind of understand what people mean by it when they say it, but as someone who is constantly growing and evolving as a person, I could say I found myself at 20. Oh, I made it. I'm in the army and I'm in E5 now or whatever. I probably was E4 for the second time. Who knows? I don't even remember. But and then I got 30 and I thought I knew some stuff. And then I got to 40 and then I got remarried and then I got a degree and and then retire. All these different things, you know what I mean? So I don't really understand what it means when someone really finds themselves. I understand when it means when someone finds their purpose, and that purpose is the direction or the north star for their journey. But I don't really understand the finding myself. I'm constantly learning more about myself year after year after year after year. So, I don't want to just crap on the question and just not really answer it, but I really don't understand the 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 context and the nitty-gritty behind finding myself. Like I said, when people say it, I know what they mean. I kind of understand it and I get it, but as far as it being applicable to my life, I can't really say that I've ever really found myself. I'm still growing and building. I have an understanding. I know a lot of things about myself, but that's kind of where I'm at.
Um, I would say when you hear a person say that, I need to find myself, I think it's a number of things that they can mean. Number one, they believe their life doesn't have meaning. Um, and they're trying to figure out what significant thing that they were created to do. Um, number two, um, they just could be in a space in their life to where they're just doing some soul searching. They don't know what they're looking for. They don't have no idea of what that answer is. But they're just in that space. And then number three is that I don't want your opinion about what it is I'm currently not doing. I think within the scope of those three perspectives of find myself, I think that's where you'll find people who use that term exist. And I think in most cases, it's probably more so of C being used mostly because they're not doing anything. They know they're not doing anything, and they have no plans to do anything right now. So when mommy and daddy asked 21-year-old Dwayne, for example, what you gonna do with your life? Well, I'm just trying to find myself right now. And fortunately, I was never in that situation because I needed to go do something. Sitting around home wasn't an option for me. Um, and like Garfield, I don't think I've ever been in a place where I actually used that as an excuse. Um, I was doing something until I figured it out. And I think too many times we get comfortable in the excuses that we make for the things that we're not doing instead of being brave enough to make the mistake so that we can learn from the errors that we're making in life and then make the adjustments and keep moving forward.
I love it. I'm actually right here with it. Can we bring up the comment real quick? My, my sister, I'm right here with you. Um, so I found my superficial self when I truly accepted Christ. Then I saw myself. You know, for me, when I always heard people say, gotta find myself, find myself, I don't think most people, and this is just me, and I agree with everything my brother said, but I think most people didn't really know what that meant, but they knew they had more soul searching to do. At the lowest level, right? Um, but it was something when I saw myself when I accepted Christ. When I read the scripture, Revelations, he describes Christ when he saw Christ high and lifted up. He saw not just the woolly, they were hair like wool, white like wool, but the eyes of flaming fire. That always ignited something when I read that scripture. I know we mostly people like to point to the scripture and say, see, he was African, he had red eyes and woolly hair. All right. But then we miss what he's doing. The fire of his eyes is the refining that the scripture says he will do for the Father. He's the refiner for the Father. Right. And so to see myself through the glass, through the fiery eyes, I did not like what I saw. When I found myself, I didn't like the man that stood before me. And I think that set me to where Unc is, to where I'm constantly growing and I'm constantly learning more about not just about me, but the more I learn about the world, the more I learn about the word, the more I learn about the Most High, the more I understand that I am so incomplete. And that's the person I needed to find. The incomplete person that needed to be worked on, because now I was able to put myself in a position to get on the potter's wheel. But I couldn't get on the potter's wheel because what are you making? What are you making when I think that I already got it? When I thought that I was good, I was doing it right. But so I do appreciate that comment. So that's where I was when I hear the term find myself, for me, that's where I go to. I found myself through the lens of the fiery eyes of Christ, and it caused me to understand that I needed to go through the refinery. I needed to be tried by fire so that I can come out white as snow, as the scripture says.
I misunderstood the question. I just seen that. Okay, I got it now.
No, yes, sir. Yes. Man, I like this conversation. Yeah. But with that said, just like every conversation, we get to this point to where we don't want to, but we know we have to. We got to go to our final thoughts.
I think today we had a really good conversation. We talked about, you'll never have a healthy relationship until you fix this one. Going inside and figuring out, the things that you can work on yourself to become a better version of yourself is an ongoing process. I don't believe that not that everybody, but I think that not everybody is born with the innate ability to just, you know, start life off with the ability to look inward, figure out what's wrong, create a plan, do an assessment, and then go out and apply the assessment to achieve the goals to become the version that you want to be. But I do believe that people through time can figure out how to do these things. Again, this topic is I believe is so important because it's the foundation for a lot of stuff. It's the foundation for all your relationships. It's the foundation for starting families and having kids and passing this information down, whereas the next generation can be better off. You know what I'm saying? So I believe that, I'm so glad we had this conversation because again, taking care of yourself, you know what I mean, and becoming a better version of yourself and fixing that relationship with the person that you see in the mirror ultimately helps everything. Now imagine if everybody, let's think about this. Think about if everybody in the world would just work on themselves. Not even that. Think about if everybody at your job would just work on themselves. What if everybody in your family, everybody under your roof? So that's why this conversation was so important. And that's why conversations like these are so important because a lot of relationships, most relationships, if not all relationships, start with the person in the mirror and then the information where you get that the information where you get not the information, yeah, the directions and information that you get in order to apply to your life to become a better version of the person that you see in the mirror. And that's my final thought for this evening.
I truly enjoyed this conversation. I enjoyed listening to everybody's thoughts as it pertains to it. Um, I think it's important that as we look at this notion of healthy relationships, that we really understand what is truly healthy as it pertains to relationships. I think, for the most part, we have to recognize that there are things within us that need correcting. The beautiful part about that statement is that nobody's exempt. Being able to go back to the creator, and we talked about it in the beginning, understanding the stages of relationship development is key. And a lot of us don't really talk about that a lot. We may talk about it in the secular space, but we don't necessarily talk about it in the spiritual space. Understanding the stages of relationship development is key. Getting to the point that you understand what the law of God is all about so you can understand who God the Father is. He is the rewarder of good deeds and the punisher of bad deeds. And then we move on and understand the necessity of Christ. And then we accept the gift of God, which is salvation through him. Then we get to the point of understanding what, again, emotional intelligence, discipleship. Uh, we understand what community service looks like. We understand what boundaries look like. We create boundaries. We enforce boundaries. All of those great and wonderful things. And then we start testing the limits of our understanding as it pertains to relationships. That is key. But all the while, every relationship that I get in tend to serve one of the most important purposes that I could ever imagine. It literally holds a mirror up in my face and show me me. It really is the validation of my understanding of relationship in time and space. And if for whatever reason I reject any of that information, then what I do is I carry that same behavior into my next interaction with somebody else. And then I end up holding that person hostage of the work that I didn't do. That's an important thing for everybody to digest and process. I don't care who you are. I don't care how old you are. I don't care how many years you've been in the pulpit. I don't care how many years you've been in the, standing in the front of the classroom. I don't care how many grandkids you got. You ain't exempt from anything I just said, because here's the reality of the truth. If and when you think you are perfect, I promise you, give me 5 minutes with you and I can prove that you're not. Again, every relationship, I believe, relationship, again, like I keep saying, is the ultimate training ground. It serves a amazing purpose to where it can teach you something about yourself, but only if you're humble enough to learn the lesson. And I'll land right there.
Let me tell you, I was looking at a specific scripture that I wanted to implement into my final thoughts. But I think it's going to work because it made me see something. Because I had to go up. I couldn't just sit on that verse. I had to make sure the context around it fit. But I saw something. And I just want to share it with y'all. I'm one of those people, when I see something and it connects in the scripture that it didn't connect the way it did before, it blows my mind. Because I love how God can always show you something, right? But Genesis 3, we know the story, right? when the woman saw, verse 6 says, and when the woman saw that the tree was good for food and that it was pleasant to the eyes and a tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat. And the eyes of them both were opened, and they knew that they were naked. That is my focus right there. And they saw fig leaves together and made themselves aprons. That is Genesis 3, 6 and 7. But 2 Corinthians 5 did something for me that I didn't think it was going to do. Right? Verse 1 said, for we know that if our earthly house of this tabernacle were dissolved, we have a building of God, a house not made with hands, eternal in heavens. For in this we groan, earnestly desiring to be clothed upon with our house which is from heaven. If so be that being clothed, we shall not be found naked. When I tell you that blew my mind just now. For we groan earnestly, desiring to be clothed upon with our house, which is from heaven. Our walk with the Father, our end goal is the great reset. It's going to happen whether we like it or not. And there are people who don't like it because they desire power, so they don't want to be in the space where the Most High has power. But sin was the thing that found them naked, because when they said to the Father, we were naked, he said, well, who told you were naked? Right? That was the issue that was addressed that led to the core sin and disobedience of the Most High. Fast forward, he's talking about not being found naked. Well, how do we not be found naked when this tabernacle passes away and become dissolved? Is that now we desire to put on that heavenly tabernacle, because we'll be clothed with the righteousness of God. I think when we're on this journey trying to seek ourselves, when we're on this journey trying to better ourselves, on this journey trying to have healthier relationships, I think the first core thing we need to know is, are you planning on being clothed with your heavenly house? Are you on the same path? If sin is the path that led us to become naked, then the path that is going to lead to us to become clothed is the righteousness of the Father. If I leave you with anything, and I love what both my brothers left us with for our final thoughts, but I'm going to leave you with that. Let's set our eyes on the mark. Let's forget those things which are behind. We're starting a new journey. Every day we learn something new. We're starting a new journey with new information. You seek it in. Let's pray on it. Let's sit on it, and let's desire how to move forward in it, how to make all of this applicable in our lives, so we can be better for ourselves, be better for one another, and be better for the Most High. Listen, I love you all. I'm glad you all stuck through it with us and indulged us. I appreciate you, brothers. For y'all know I always say that y'all make me look good when it's my turn at the mic. So I appreciate you, brothers. With that said, I know tomorrow we have, which week is this? Is this the Hearts of Women? All right. Yep. Thank you everyone for joining tonight. Please make sure you tune in tomorrow at 10:30 Eastern Standard Time. That'd be 9:30 Central Time. I think I'm the only one that's Central Time anymore. But please be there. I know them sisters are going to come with fire. I promise you, every episode of the Hearts of Women that I tune into gets better than the last. It just keeps getting better. And they're finding their pace, and I'm loving it. If you are not tuning in to them ladies, tune Tell your girls about them. Tell your boys about it. We got women who tune into the hearts of men. You can tell some men to tune into the hearts of women. Maybe it'll help us hear y'all better, right? And understand y'all better. And that's what we hope happens when y'all listen to us, right? And that we grow together. Any other housekeeping?
Nope, that was it. Tomorrow morning, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah. With that said, I love you all. Maintain your availability for everybody you love. That is dependent on you. Have a great rest of your evening.